The autumn morning at Arlington National Cemetery was crisp, the kind of chill that made the air feel almost sacred. Sunlight filtered through the branches of tall oaks, casting elongated shadows across the rows of pristine white headstones. Jacob Walsh, 32, a former Army Ranger who had seen the chaos of 2 tours in the Middle East, stood motionless at the tomb of the unknown soldier. His navy blue uniform was impeccable, his kepi tilted just so, sunglasses reflecting the quiet reverence of the place. Every step he took was deliberate. 21 steps, a precise turn, a pause, and then the cycle began anew. To onlookers, it was ceremony. To Jacob, it was a vow, a sacred promise to honor those who had given everything. The quiet of the cemetery was broken only by subtle sounds, the rustling of leaves, distant footsteps of visitors, the occasional soft murmur. Jacob's senses, honed by years in combat, registered everything. He noted the rhythm of his own heartbeat, the whisper of wind through the trees, the faint click of a camera shutter somewhere in the crowd. He had seen danger in countless forms, in dusty villages and crowded marketplaces, yet the discipline of guarding the tomb demanded absolute calm and precision. Among the scattered tourists and solemn veterans, a figure did not belong. Victor Morazzov, 42, an international fugitive wanted by Interpol for terrorism and armed smuggling, stood near the edge of the viewing area. His leather jacket was polished, his neatly combed hair slicked back, but the scuffed combat boots betrayed a history of violence and clandestine missions. He watched Jacob with cold, calculating eyes, his hand casually resting near the pocket, concealing a modified CZ-75B pistol. Every movement he made was measured, deliberate, designed to test, probe, and intimidate. Margaret Hayes, a 68-year-old retired librarian and former Army nurse, guided a group of schoolchildren nearby. Her gray hair was tucked under a volunteer cap, but her eyes remained sharp. She had a sixth sense for unease, honed by years patching up soldiers in the field. When Victor lingered by her information booth, asking questions about guard schedules and security cameras with feigned curiosity, her instincts flared. Now, watching him drift toward the tomb with a predator's precision, she subtly caught Jacob's gaze during his brief pause in the patrol. She whispered, barely audible, "Man, he's asking too many questions. Something's not right." Jacob's eyes flicked toward Victor, noting every subtle motion, the careful weight shifts, the faint outline under the jacket suggesting a concealed weapon. His mind, trained to react under pressure, began calculating distances, possible outcomes, and angles of engagement. Around them, the crowd remained unaware of the brewing tension. Families admired the tomb. Veterans stood in silent remembrance. Children clutched small American flags. Yet the air had changed. An unspoken alarm rippled through those who could sense it. Jacob's posture remained perfect, ceremonial, but his awareness sharpened. This was no ordinary visitor. Every detail mattered. The movement of Victor's fingers, the faint smell of gun oil, the clinical observation in his eyes. In this sacred ground, the ritual of 21 steps, the pause, the turn, was about to face a test Jacob had trained his whole life to meet. The crisp morning air seemed to grow heavier as Victor Morazzov edged closer to the tomb of the unknown soldier. Every step he took was deliberate, weaving through the scattered tourists with the practiced ease of a predator. His eyes never left Jacob Walsh, studying the rhythm of his 21-step patrol, cataloging every pause, every turn. Jacob's senses, sharpened by years of combat, picked up on the subtleties, the faint metallic scent of gun oil, the controlled twitch of Victor's fingers near his concealed pistol. Margaret Hayes, still guiding the schoolchildren, felt a chill run down her spine. Her gaze flicked from Victor to Jacob, noting the subtle tension in the guard's stance. She edged closer under the pretense of adjusting a pamphlet display, whispering to Jacob during a brief pause, "He's too controlled. Something's not right." Jacob's eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, acknowledgement passing silently. His posture remained ceremonial, but internally, every nerve was alert, every decision pre-computed in fractions of a second. The crowd was a tableau of normalcy, families snapping pictures, veterans standing solemnly, children clutching flags, unaware that danger was threading itself through their midst. Victor paused near a low barrier, his hand brushing the edge of his jacket. His voice, low and deliberate, sliced through the ambient quiet. "Quite the show you put on here, soldier. All this ceremony for what? A dying empire." Jacob did not respond. Protocol demanded composure, but his mind cataloged the man's stance, the weight distribution, the subtle cues of advanced training. Every movement Victor made spoke of experience in conflict, of missions executed in shadows. Jacob's eyes flicked across the crowd, noting the proximity of civilians and the best angles to neutralize a threat without endangering innocence. Margaret's hand hovered near the emergency call button, her fingers poised to summon help without causing alarm. The man in the leather jacket leaned slightly, muttering under his breath, "We see your symbols. We know their fragility." Each word, though faint, resonated with menace. Jacob felt the familiar calm of a warrior entering a high-stakes moment. This was no ambush in a foreign desert. This was precision measured in seconds, executed in the midst of the living and the reverent dead. Victor's eyes glinted as he subtly shifted his weight, preparing for the action he had been rehearsing. The faint click of his pistol's safety echoed almost imperceptibly, yet Jacob caught it. Time seemed to stretch. The surrounding crowd remained oblivious, yet for Jacob, every second was an eternity of calculation. He anticipated, planned, and positioned mentally for the confrontation he knew was imminent. Then, the first ripple of chaos appeared. A young couple instinctively lowered their phones, a mother pulled her children closer, and veterans stiffened, in recognition of the threat. Jacob's body remained stoic, ceremonial, but inside, every muscle and thought was coiled, prepared for the moment the fugitive would commit. The cemetery, bathed in early sunlight, was silent but for the subtle, warning signs. The breeze stirring the leaves, the quiet murmur of the crowd, the heartbeat of a soldier ready to defend sacred ground. The tension was palpable, stretching taut across the rows of headstones, binding the guard, the fugitive, and the unsuspecting onlookers into a moment suspended between ritual and violence. Jacob's inner voice was steady. Stay disciplined. Observe. Protect. Neutralize if necessary. In the heart of Arlington, the stage was set. The fugitive's plan was in motion, but so was the guard's resolve, unwavering, precise, and lethal if called upon. Victor Morazzov's movements grew deliberate, each step measured as he navigated closer to the tomb of the unknown soldier. His eyes, cold and calculating, never left Jacob Walsh. Every detail of the guard's 21-step patrol was catalogued, every pause memorized. The CZ-75B pistol under his leather jacket shifted slightly, reflecting the sunlight in a glint that only a trained eye could notice. The crowd remained oblivious, but Jacob's senses were razor-sharp, detecting the faint metallic scent of gun oil and the subtle tension in Victor's posture. Jacob's heart rate remained steady, his body coiled like a spring. Years of combat had taught him to read threats, to anticipate motion, to neutralize danger with precision. He noticed the slightest twitch of Victor's fingers, the way his weight shifted, the quiet, almost imperceptible sound of the pistol's safety being disengaged. Every instinct screamed that the confrontation was imminent. Margaret Hayes, still near her volunteer post, moved with careful discretion. Her gray hair peeking from beneath her cap, eyes sharp as ever, she subtly positioned herself to observe the unfolding situation. Children held small American flags, unaware of the silent tension threading through the air. Veterans in the crowd stiffened, some instinctively scanning the area, their own experiences resonating with the unease. Margaret's hand hovered near. The emergency call button, a subtle but crucial gesture signaling help, was moments away. Victor spoke, his voice low but deliberate, cutting through the quiet murmur of the cemetery. "Quite the show you put on here, soldier. All this ceremony for what? A dying empire. Weak leaders, fragile symbols. We see it. We're ready to show the world how delicate your traditions are." Each word carried a practiced menace, a psychological probe intended to unsettle. Jacob's response was internal, measured, methodical. He cataloged the man's stance, the angle of his shoulders, the slight asymmetry of his jacket hiding the weapon. He traced the potential trajectories of attack, the proximity of civilians, and calculated how to neutralize the threat without harm to the bystanders. His training in black ops and military combat merged seamlessly with ceremonial discipline, allowing him to balance precision and calm. Victor's fingers curled slightly around the pistol's grip, the metal catching a streak of sunlight. The crowd sensed a shift, subtle yet chilling. A mother instinctively pulled her child closer. A young couple lowered their phones. Veterans exchanged tense glances. Time seemed to stretch, each second laden with anticipation. The cemetery, bathed in soft morning light, became a stage where ritual met imminent danger. Jacob's eyes never wavered, his posture unwavering. He was ceremonial, disciplined, yet every muscle was primed, every nerve alert. The standoff was about to erupt, and the tomb of the unknown soldier stood silently at the epicenter, an enduring symbol of sacrifice and honor. In that moment, amidst the quiet whispers of the crowd and the distant rustle of autumn leaves, Jacob's calm resolve contrasted sharply with Victor's predatory precision. As Victor's hand tightened around the pistol, Jacob's mind raced with contingency plans. He visualized the sequence: disarm, control, protect. The sacred ground demanded more than reflex. It demanded perfect execution. Every passing second brought the fugitive closer to his goal, and every second allowed Jacob to prepare the inevitable response. The tension was absolute. Arlington's solemn beauty, the glinting headstones, and the crisp morning light became a backdrop to a confrontation that could shatter the serenity in a heartbeat. The stage was set. One wrong move, one slight hesitation, and the silence would be broken. Victor Morazzov's hand shifted subtly beneath his jacket, the CZ-75B pistol barely visible but exuding silent menace. The autumn sunlight glinted off the polished metal, a warning unnoticed by the casual tourists around him. His gaze remained locked on Jacob Walsh, assessing, calculating, anticipating every move. Time seemed suspended, the hum of the crowd fading into the background, leaving only the staccato rhythm of Victor's approach and the guard's steady heartbeat. Jacob's training kicked in, merging years of Army Ranger combat with the ritualistic precision of the tomb guard. Every muscle coiled, every decision pre-computed. He cataloged Victor's stance, the slight angle of his shoulders, the subtle pressure on his concealed pistol, the tilt of his head that betrayed his anticipation. Jacob did not flinch. The ceremonial mask remained, but internally, his mind raced through contingencies. Margaret Hayes, sensing the escalating threat, subtly edged closer to the children she had been guiding. Her gray hair glimmered in the soft sunlight, eyes sharp, scanning the approaching figure. She pressed her hand lightly on the emergency call button, activating a silent alert without alarming the crowd. The tension hung in the air like an invisible fog, wrapping the tomb of the unknown soldier in a cocoon of suspense. Victor's voice cut through the quiet. This ceremony is a facade. Weakness hidden behind tradition. Your nation is fragile. I'll show you how meaningless these rituals are. His accent, polished and neutral, carried the hard edge of a man who had lived in shadows and conflict zones. Every word was deliberate, meant to unsettle, to provoke a reaction. Jacob's eyes remained forward, focusing not on the words but on the subtle cues. The weight shift in Victor's stance, the glint of sunlight off the pistol, the micro-tension in his fingers. He noted every detail with clinical precision. Custom trigger assembly, barrel wear patterns, magazine fully loaded. Each element told a story of previous engagements, of missions executed with lethal efficiency. The crowd began to sense a disturbance. Children clutched flags tighter, couples lowered phones, veterans' eyes hardened. Margaret subtly maneuvered to create a buffer, her body a shield for the most vulnerable. Jacob's mind anticipated Victor's next move, calculating angles, distance, and timing with the cold precision of a combat veteran. Victor's fingers curled around the pistol, the metal cold and glinting in the morning light. He whispered, low enough for Jacob to hear, "Any last words, guard? Or will you die clinging to empty traditions?" The threat was clear, deliberate, immediate. Jacob's response was internal, a steadying mantra honed through years of disciplined training. Observe, protect, neutralize. He shifted weight subtly, aligning his body for the fastest, most efficient disarm possible. Every spectator became background noise. The only focus was the man with the weapon, the sacred ground at stake, and the split seconds that would decide the outcome. The cemetery, its rows of white headstones glowing under the soft autumn sun, became a stage for a high-stakes confrontation. The tension was tangible, the air heavy with anticipation. Arlington had never been so silent yet so charged, a place where discipline, courage, and readiness were about to be tested in a moment that could shatter the tranquility of the hallowed ground. Jacob's mind remained calm, methodical, precise. The threat had materialized, but he was ready. The sacred duty of guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier demanded nothing less than perfection, and in these critical seconds, Jacob Walsh embodied it fully. Victor Morazzov's hand finally emerged. From beneath his leather jacket, the blue steel of his CZ-75B pistol glinting sharply in the crisp autumn sunlight. The crowd gasped softly, some instinctively stepping back, others frozen in disbelief. His posture was theatrical, deliberate, every movement measured to assert dominance. He held the gun low, not yet aimed, savoring the fear it elicited. Jacob. Walsh remained composed, every muscle coiled yet perfectly controlled. The ceremonial poise of the tomb guard masked the storm of analysis running through his mind. Years of combat, ambushes, and high-stakes disarmament had trained him to read every subtle cue. The weight distribution in Victor's stance, the way his fingers hovered near the trigger, the slight shift of his shoulders indicating intent. This was no longer a test of ceremony, it was a test of survival. Margaret Hayes, the retired nurse and volunteer, sensed the culmination of threat. Her hands, steady despite the tension, hovered near the emergency call. Children and families instinctively clustered closer to her, aware of the charged energy radiating from the man with the gun. Veterans in the crowd stiffened, eyes narrowing, silently rooting for the guard who embodied both discipline and courage. Victor's voice cut through the air, low and menacing. "This is where your ceremony ends, guard. One shot and your sacred tomb becomes a headline. Any defense for your precious system?" His words were meant to provoke, to destabilize, but Jacob's focus never wavered. He cataloged every detail. Custom trigger assembly, barrel wear from hundreds of rounds, subtle hints of Balkan craftsmanship. The analysis was instant, clinical, and crucial. In an almost imperceptible motion, Jacob's gloved hand shot out. The ceremonial precision dissolved into lethal efficiency, honed from countless hours in combat. He clamped onto Victor's pistol slide, twisting and controlling the weapon with a strength that was both smooth and decisive. The CZ-75B was wrenched free from Victor's grasp, the magazine released, rounds ejecting in a controlled, graceful arc that clinked against the stone plaza. All this unfolded in under 3 seconds, leaving the crowd stunned, some swearing they only saw a flash of white glove. Victor's smug expression shattered into shock and rage. His fingers clawed at the empty space where the gun had been, his eyes widening as he realized the situation had flipped entirely. Jacob's voice remained calm yet authoritative, cataloging the weapon with clinical precision. Modified trigger assembly, Montenegro craftsmanship, Serbian spring, subsonic rounds, approximately 2,000 rounds fired based on wear patterns. You chose the wrong place, the wrong man. Victor lunged in desperation, but Jacob used the pistol's grip as a pivot, delivering a precise strike to the bridge of Victor's nose. The cartilage crunched audibly. Blood stained the fugitive's leather jacket. Victor staggered, clutching his face, voice thick with pain. "You broke my nose." Jacob's reply was ice cold. "I neutralized a threat to sacred ground." The broken nose is incidental. The crowd reacted audibly, murmurs of relief, quiet applause from veterans, hushed excitement from families. Margaret guided children to safety, her expression proud, but controlled. Sirens wailed in the distance as Arlington security converged on the plaza, officers moving quickly to cuff Victor. Police vehicles screeched to a halt, cordoning off exits, while Jacob maintained his ceremonial posture, pistol secured, calm as ever. Jacob's mind remained sharp, even as action ended. Surveillance cameras had captured Victor from multiple angles. Hospitals were on alert, likely tracking the fugitive's next move. The tomb of the unknown soldier stood unblemished, its honor intact. Jacob resumed his patrol, each step a tribute to those who had paid the ultimate price. The crowd, now safe, watched in awe, whispers filled with respect and admiration. The wail of sirens grew louder as Arlington security and police converged on the plaza. Victor Morazzov, bloodied and humiliated, was firmly restrained by multiple officers, each motion coordinated to prevent further struggle. The crowd, though shaken, maintained a respectful distance, whispering among themselves in a mix of awe and relief. The sacred ground of the tomb of the unknown soldier had been defended, and the enormity of what they had just witnessed began to sink in. Jacob Walsh's eyes swept the plaza, noting every detail. Each piece of the scene mattered. The placement of the fugitive, the scattered rounds, the ejected magazine, the reactions of bystanders, the positions of responding officers. Years of combat had ingrained this meticulousness. Every variable could become critical if the threat was not fully neutralized. His breathing remained calm, measured, almost ceremonial, yet his mind analyzed every angle, every potential weak point. Margaret Hayes, still near the children she had shepherded to safety, observed Jacob with deep admiration. Her years as a field nurse in war zones had trained her to recognize genuine calm under pressure, and she saw it reflected in every movement of the guard. The young children clutched their flags tighter, eyes wide, absorbing both the danger that had passed and the heroism they had just witnessed. Veterans in the crowd exchanged quiet nods, their expressions reflecting a mixture of nostalgia, approval, and respect. Detectives and forensic teams began processing the scene. Cameras captured the blood trail Victor left behind. Ejected rounds were cataloged, and officers documented every movement for investigative records. One detective approached Jacob, noting the precision of the disarm and the efficacy of his movements. "That was impressive. Anything we need to know about this guy?" he asked, pen poised above a notepad. Jacob calmly recited details with a clinical precision born of experience. Modified CZ-75B, likely sourced through Balkan networks. Stance indicates paramilitary training, Eastern European, possibly Serbian. Facial recognition and Interpol. Database confirm identity. Victor Morazzov, wanted for multiple attacks across Europe. Victor, now under full control, remained defiant, muttering threats through his swollen and bloodied face. "You'll regret this. We're everywhere. You haven't seen the last of me." Jacob's eyes never wavered. The fight was over the moment the gun was drawn, and the fugitive's bravado meant nothing against trained skill, discipline, and preparation. Surveillance cameras had already captured his face, and the network of law enforcement was closing in. With the immediate threat neutralized, Jacob returned to his ceremonial stance. Every movement from step to pause resumed its precise rhythm. The crowd, previously tense, now watched in awe as the guard embodied both tradition and readiness, his unwavering composure serving as a tangible reminder of honor and courage. Margaret quietly approached, offering words of gratitude and admiration. "My husband was a Marine, buried here unknown to most. You honored him today, Jacob. All of them." Jacob's reply was measured, understated. "It's what we do, ma'am." For them. The autumn sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the plaza. The polished metals on Jacob's chest gleamed, each one a silent testament to sacrifice and service. Families, tourists, and veterans observed quietly, a mix of reverence, pride, and respect filling the air. The tomb of the unknown soldier, once threatened, stood undisturbed, a symbol of steadfast duty and national reverence. Even as police transported Victor to a secure facility, Jacob's gaze swept the area, ever vigilant. Each footstep of his resumed patrol was a promise kept, a silent dedication to the fallen, a reminder that honor, courage, and sacrifice are more than abstract ideals. They are actions, choices, and unwavering resolve manifested in moments of crisis. The plaza slowly settled into a tenuous calm. Sirens faded into the distance as Victor Morazzov was transported to a secure facility, his threats trailing behind him like a bitter echo. The crowd, now at a safe distance, whispered among themselves, processing the extraordinary sequence of events they had just witnessed. Children clutched flags, veterans straightened their posture, and tourists lowered their cameras, realizing that history had unfolded before their very eyes. Jacob Walsh resumed his patrol with measured steps. Each footfall echoed across the plaza, a rhythmic reminder of discipline and reverence. His mind, however, was not at ease. The fugitive's calculated threat had tested not only his reflexes, but also his ability to stay composed under intense psychological pressure. Yet, every decision, every motion had been deliberate. Jacob's training as an Army Ranger had transformed into instinctive precision, allowing him to neutralize danger without breaking the ceremonial cadence that honored the fallen. Margaret, Hayes moved closer to observe the guard more intimately. Her eyes reflected both admiration and relief, recognizing the professionalism and courage Jacob had displayed. "He honored them today," she whispered softly, referring to her late husband, a Marine whose resting place was unknown to many. Her words were not merely gratitude. They were a testament to the emotional weight carried by those who dedicate their lives to guarding the nation's memory. Jacob acknowledged her quietly, his expression calm, but resolute. "It's what we do, ma'am, for them." Veterans lingered in the plaza, their eyes misty with recollection. They saw in Jacob not just a guard, but a continuation of a legacy, discipline forged in battle, courage tempered by sacrifice, and unwavering dedication to ideals larger than oneself. Some whispered stories from their own service, comparing the guard's precision to moments they had endured on distant battlefields. The connection between past and present, between memory and action, was tangible, almost sacred. Jacob's gaze scanned the surroundings again. Forensics teams had begun cataloging the plaza, photographing blood trails, documenting the ejected rounds, and analyzing surveillance footage. Every detail mattered, and Jacob's knowledge of military tactics allowed him to offer subtle guidance to the investigators, ensuring no nuance was missed. Victor's paramilitary background, his tactical posture, and the modifications to his weapon all provided insight into his patterns, potentially aiding law enforcement in tracking his associates. As the late afternoon sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the rows of headstones. The tomb of the unknown soldier remained pristine, a solemn monument untouched by chaos. Jacob's reflection shifted inward, contemplating the men and women whose sacrifices this duty symbolized. The ceremonial steps he took were more than routine. They were acts of remembrance, affirmation, and respect. In that quiet, sacred space, the past and present converged, forming a bridge of duty that Jacob straddled with quiet strength. Margaret's presence, the awe of the crowd, and the silent acknowledgement of veterans reminded Jacob of the human connection that underscored every ritual. These people bore witness not merely to a heroic act, but to a reaffirmation of principles: vigilance, honor, and service. Each step he took was a promise, a continuation of a legacy that could not falter, even in the face of immediate danger. As the sun began its descent and the plaza's tension eased into serenity, Jacob's thoughts centered on the unseen soldiers resting beneath the marble, the families of the fallen, and the countless visitors who would never know the peril that had been averted. Each step, each pause, each careful turn of his ceremonial cycle was a silent vow. The legacy of sacrifice would never be broken. The sun dipped behind the horizon, painting Arlington National Cemetery in hues of gold and crimson. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the faint echo of a day that had begun with routine and ended with extraordinary vigilance. Jacob Walsh continued his patrol, every step deliberate, every pause measured, as if the rhythm of the tomb itself guided him. The plaza, once the stage of imminent danger, now hummed with a solemn tranquility. Families lingered at a safe distance, whispering about the events they had witnessed. Children, wide-eyed and clutching small flags, pointed at Jacob with admiration. Veterans nodded quietly, a mixture of respect and nostalgia in their eyes. Margaret Hayes stood slightly apart, observing the guard whose composure had prevented a tragedy. Her own memories, of tending wounded soldiers in chaotic war zones, mirrored the silent courage she saw reflected in Jacob. Jacob's thoughts drifted to the unknown soldiers beneath the tomb. Each footstep was a tribute to their sacrifice, each careful turn a gesture of remembrance. The weight of the past was heavy, yet it grounded him. He recalled Victor Morazzov's cold stare, the glint of his weapon, the moment when life and death balanced on the edge of instinct and training. The memory did not haunt him. It reminded him of why he stood there, why the ceremony mattered, why vigilance was non-negotiable. The plaza was alive with quiet reverence. Tourists murmured in awe, veterans exchanged knowing glances, and the autumn breeze carried the soft rustle of flags and fallen leaves. Jacob's eyes scanned the perimeter, noting minor disturbances, subtle shifts in the crowd, and the lingering tension in the atmosphere. His training had taught him to expect the unexpected, and though Victor was gone, the vigilance remained. Duty, after all, did not end with the resolution of a single threat. Margaret approached once more, her voice soft but steady. "He would have been proud today. You honored all of them." Jacob met her gaze, understanding that the approval of those who had shared in sacrifice carried weight beyond medals or accolades. His reply was calm, carrying the quiet authority of someone who had walked through fire and emerged disciplined, focused, and resolute. "It's what we do, ma'am. For them." The shadows grew longer, stretching across the rows of pristine headstones. The cemetery, bathed in the warm glow of sunset, seemed to exhale, settling back into its eternal rhythm. Jacob's steps echoed in the fading light, a cadence that spoke of continuity, honor, and unwavering commitment. The children's whispers, the veterans' quiet acknowledgments, and Margaret's watchful presence were all threads woven into the tapestry of a day that tested courage and upheld legacy. As darkness approached, Jacob's patrol continued uninterrupted. Each movement, 21 steps, turn, pause, was a reaffirmation of a creed that bound him to those who had given everything for the nation. The events of the day had been a stark reminder. Threats were unpredictable, courage was essential, and the legacy of sacrifice demanded action, vigilance, and unwavering resolve. Even as Victor Morazzov's curses faded into the night, Jacob knew the tomb's honor remained intact. His thoughts lingered on the families, the veterans, and the unknown soldiers whose memory he safeguarded. Duty was not merely a series of steps, it was a promise, a living testament to the principles of service, courage, and respect. The plaza settled into quietude, the last light casting long shadows over the tomb. Jacob paused, surveying the scene one final time, a silent vow resonating in every fiber of his being. The tomb of the unknown soldier stood protected, its dignity preserved, its legacy secure. And Jacob Walsh, sentinel of both ceremony and safety, resumed his eternal watch, every step a pledge, every pause a prayer for those who had come before.